Thank you all, and let's begin this evening's journey with the Temple of Cosmic Dance with Professor Ajay.
Well, what a wonderful feeling when I entered this venue. Nataraja welcomed us, and when I read, it was gifted to this place by none other than Karan Singh ji and his wife. So, good omen. And I see so many of my students and daughter of a colleague of mine, and of course the panelists who are here. Yes, because Abhirami's grandfather is in ICU, that's why she could not join. But she has sent a video, so which we will play during the present after some slides. And if moderator madam will permit me. Okay. I want to start by saying that how this all initiated, this book idea. In 2017, we finished a project called, which was from ICHR and supported by AHRC. That was about, the theme was cultural heritage and rapid urbanization. But the project was related with Ajay Pushkar, which we were doing together with Dronah Foundation and Professor Adam Hardy, Oriel, and in the end, in middle of almost same season, in 2017, I met with an accident in UK and I was hospitalized. Over there, Oriel came to see. And then she was of course in a foreign country. When you are there and someone known to you comes, suddenly you feel, oh, now you are, and Oriel, Adam, and so many people were there. At that time, many of our PhD students also reached. So at that time, Oriel said that we are getting another project. Would you join? You know, I am lying after as doctor said, significant attack. I said, what is the significant? You know, it is a significant stroke. I said that it is. I know only about heat stroke. I don't know about this. What other stroke you are? I am from India. So he said, no, you will be all right because you are a devotee. He said, this, how do you know? Well, because you below there is a picture. I'll show you what. Then he said that the nurse who was an Indonesian, she took out my own book, which was about Lord Hanuman. And he said that he has saved you and you. So that particular picture is having one chapai at Shankar Suman Kesari Nandan. And from that day onwards, we started searching. And then when Oriel was sitting, she said that we have another project, could you work on this? I said, well, if I will be out of this place and working condition, definitely. From 2017 on 11th of November. And now 2024, almost 11th of November is 2 days away. So I am also celebrating the anniversary of my stroke in 2 days. Stroke with luck. And luck was that ये सहज धर्म चारणी. अब लोगों ने कभी सुना है कि कोई महिला कहती है ये मेरे धर्म पति हैं? कभी नहीं कहते. ऐसा क्यों है? It is only because कहते हैं हाँ हम सब मर्द जो हैं वो कहते हैं धर्म पत्नी. बट कभी कोई लेडी ये नहीं कहती धर्म पति, क्योंकि हम लोग शायद धर्म निभाना नहीं जानते हैं. या इज इट समवेयर? Anyway, she have done her duty and brought me from Stonehenge to a best possible facilities, Salisbury District Hospital, and then did what or not. For 4 days, I was just hearing some bell, which I was not sure what it is, and that those bells were ringing in my head. And then I was wondering where is this all coming from. And then when Oriel said that we are going to do another project which is about conservation of Tamil temple towns, contestations and heritage. And almost on the similar days, Shikha was attending a seminar organized by UNESCO in Chennai when Madurai fire accident took place. After that, we went on to a huge and long journey of 17 onwards. We have been working on this project. Hello. Come. So from 2017, School of Planning and Architecture, Dronah Foundation, especially Shikhaji and Oriel, Adam Hardy sir, we all were doing a project related with conservation and contestations about Tamil temple towns. Now, in that journey, we used to travel to various temple towns. I am a resident of Lucknow. I had never heard that there are something called the Runail Valley, there is a place called Tenkasi, there is a place called various names which are associated with South India. And as ma'am was talking about the Tanka shrines and this Pansabais. But then in the process, when we were doing this project of and then we used to take our students everywhere to various places. And then every time there was one incident which used to happen, and then we used to say that why don't you that particular student, why don't you do this or that project? The first incident happened when we were traveling with a group of our conservation students, where we met. We reached to a place, and then a student called Bhopal, Gayatri Gopalakrishnan. She said, "Sir, have you heard about Mercury worship? Mercury as a planet." So she took up a project of astrology worship of Tamil Nadu. That is a tradition there. And then when this particular batch, where this our co-author is a god, Abhirami, we were traveling to various temple towns, as I said. And the first of the places where we reached was, of course, Tanjore. And then from there we traveled to at least 7 temple towns. And when we reached Chidambaram, this girl, who was probably somebody saw a glimpse of this, she is an accomplished Kuchipudi dancer. And she started telling, "Sir, this is a place of where all of us, those who are associated with arts, they should come." Well, why so? So then she explained to entire students the Sabhai concept, and she took us around, and then she said that I have taken permission from the authorities of temple. I want to perform. Perform where? In one of the Pansabha, that is within the Chidambaram complex. However, so when she started explaining this idea of Sabhai, then I was totally unaware, and we had 2 teachers. A lot of you know Vishakha, Ramesh, none of us knew about this concept. Then she explained to us that these are the 5 temples where it is said that Shiva in the form of dancing god and in the form of Nataraja has performed cosmic dance in various sabhais, and these are the places which can be seen in this. So before we, because I don't see many South Indian faces here, but yeah, of course Shreya is here from Bangalore. But we just set the context that what we are talking about. We all know probably that Mahabalipuram or Mavalapuram is a Pallava territory, and in the south, in the part of South India, can we go to the next slide? These are the places which show that physio-cultural zones of Tamil Nadu. And in the this particular map, we are saying that there are places which are named as Mulai, Marutham, Kurinji, Naital, and Palai. And then if we see corresponding colors, we see that there are many areas which are semi-arid regions, but then there are, and Kaveris of course can be seen in it, Kaveri Patnam, Nagapattinam, and even Kanyakumari, and then the political divisions are also there. Chera kingdom can be seen in this. So this particular south area, as I mentioned, that it was, go to the next slide. Yeah. So then Pallavas were ruling a large territory in this particular period of 400 CE to 700 CE. We see that Pallavas ruled in this area, in which these two important towns definitely come. They are Mamallapuram and Kanchipuram. Now, when 880 Chol kingdom established itself as an empire, then Chola territory has covered almost everything except for the Cherak territory. Chol territory covered till this part. Then, of course, in 12th century, Chola territory, Chola kingdom collapsed and Pandyans overtook, and then Madurai was the capital of Pandyas, where we see another Sava temples, which is Pansavas, out of one of the Pansavas, and Pandya territory was spread till Kanyakumari. Next, please. But after Pandyas, Vijayanagara almost took over the entire peninsula, but when in 1565 during Mughal, when Emperor Akbar was establishing his empire, at that point of time Vijayanagar dynasty and Vijayanagar empire, if we can say, collapsed, and then but their subordinates who are rulers of this part, they started ruling in the entire this part, and Nayaks and even Pandyas were forced to leave Madurai because of the attacks from the north side, and Aladdin Khilji's attack of 1315 occurred, and at that time they left Madurai and established their capital in Devkasi, which is South Kashi. Next, please. But during all these times, the temple towns were rising. Temple towns, actually one urbanist very recently commented, there is nothing like temple towns. He was commenting on a thesis which is being done by one of our colleagues, that there are no temple towns in India. But if you see in South India, this is definitely which explains very clearly that how Tamil temple towns rose from in prominence, and slowly they almost covered, if I name few, Srirangam is the most ideal, and in which there are monocentric, concentric areas where Brahman, Garharams, etc. are there, and then there are working communities on the territory. Next, please. And if we see it as a section of, this is a schematic section, but it covers even places like Srirangam, Chidambaram, Tirunelveli, and whichever areas we could travel after this idea of studies of Pansavas came into our mind. I could travel till the end of Peninsula, and in Kanyakumari also we could find Nataraja consecrated. So all the temples where Nataraja is consecrated were covered, but this 5 Pansavais concept, where it is said that cosmic dance of Shiva was performed, they are covered in this book. In this book, if we say that we are trying to establish relationship between dance and architecture, that is very true. But then only in all these 5 temples. But there is a lot of work to be done when we can find the relation. As I said, in Suchindram, where Virat kingdom was there, in that is means Kanyakumari, even there I found. And the quest for looking for Nataraja has taken me various places. Please next. And when we see Chidambaram, this is the plan of Chidambaram, courtesy Google Pro, and where we see monocentric, concentric circuits, and this is the similar which we have seen in the drawing. Now, for the panel discussion, I would request Ma'am to take over. Next, please. This is Chidambaram area, and this is Chidambaram temple. Yeah, next, please. Yeah, so this is the context where we are today. The book is divided in 16 sections, very brief sections. Till now, we have, whatever I was talking, it was about chapter up to chapter 4-5, chapter 4, but because Abhirami is not here, but she has sent a video of her talks, which now we can play. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I myself, Abhirami. I'm from Kerala. So first of all, I would like to thank Dronah Foundation, Dr. Shika ma'am, ICOMOS, SPA Bhopal, Ajay sir, Rima ma'am, and Dr. Alka ma'am, and all the other dignitaries out there for organizing such a wonderful event for this book. I would like to discuss briefly about the dance part of this book, about the Panchasabhas. Okay, so the Panchasabhas, as you all know, the 5 Sabhas are the Ratna Sabha in Tiruvalangada, the northernmost one. Then comes the Nritta Sabha in Chidambaram, Velli Sabha in Madurai, then the Tamra Sabha in Tirunelveli, and the last one, southernmost one, is the Chitra Sabha in Kutralam. So all these 5 Sabhas are associated with certain precious metals or any kind of a precious sabha. Unlike the mandapa, which has multiple functions or multiple uses and meanings, a sabha is something which is exclusively denoted or associated with Nataraja, the dance of Shiva. So all these 5 structures are actually representing 5 different Tandavas of Shiva. The first one, the one in Tiruvalangada, the Ratna Sabha, is associated with the Urtva Tandava of Shiva. Then Kanaka Sabha or the Nritta Sabha is associated with the Ananda Tandava of Shiva. Then Velli Ambalam or the Velli Sabha, Sandhya Tandavam or Sundara Tandavam. Then comes the Tirunelveli one, Tamra Sabha, which is associated with the Muni Tandavam. Final one, Chitra Sabha, denotes the Tripura Tandavam. So all these Tandavams have a mythological background as well, which I'm not going in detail. So in certain mythological context, Shiva has performed his Tandavam for either Parvati or consort Parvati or his devotees or sages or someone. So all these posters, Tandavas are actually represented in all these sabhas in the form of the idol or a sculpture. So the posters are actually, in fact, a screenshot or a snapshot of the entire course of movement, which is called as a Karana. So there are the 5 different Tandavas of Shiva, and from the spatial organization of the different sabhas, we could decipher, we could understand whether the dancer was performing for the deity. In certain cases, it is also for the devotees. They are all rich with the sculptures, ornamentation, and paintings, which all represent dance. Everything is actually inspired from the treatise of Natashastra, which is the magnum opus in India regarding dramaturgy, which includes drama, music, dance. We have organized our study and the chapters of the book into certain parts, which are the position of Sabha with respect to the temple complex and the movement pattern of the dancer, Sabha as a ritualistic space, ornamentation and sculpture. So these are certain parameters under which we have studied all these structures. So from the position of the Sabha in the temple complex, the important aspects which we could decipher was for whom the dancer was performing. The dancer and the Nataraja idol, that is the Nritta Sabha and the Kanaka Sabha, which I have encircled. These are at an elevated position. So that means there was a dialogue that was established between the dancer and the deity. So here it's very much evident that the dancer was performing for the deity. Whereas in this case, in the case of Ratna Sabha, which is located, the Sabha is located in the outermost prakaram or the space in the temple. So there it was mostly for the people or the devotees that they performed. So it's also probable that there was a procession from the temple in which the idol of Nataraja was carried to the Sabha. So here, both the cases happen. The dancer performs for the deity in the form of the idol, which is consecrated or which will be brought to the Sabha, and also for the people. The same can be seen in Chitra Sabha also. Thank you. But here in Chitra Sabha also, somewhat a similar kind of aspect can be seen. So another important aspect is sculptures. So in the case of Nritta Sabha, you can see I've shown an elevation, a detail of the kind of ornamentation that is there in the Adisthanam or the plinth of that particular Sabha. So this particular portion called the Kanta, that has certain dancing figures. So these dance figures I have shown the larger images also, which you can see. All these dance aspects you can see in the book from chapter 10 to 15 or 11 to 15 you can see, starting from Ratna Sabha. These sculptures actually represent dance. There are certain stances or the position of hand, feet, or head, or it can be a point in between a movement. So you can see how was the movement pattern of the dancer, which is actually decoded from the spatial organization of the Sabha. So in Ratna Sabha, you can see a rectangular hall with a stage at the end, whereas in Ratna Sabha, it's a square, almost a square mandapa with a projection towards the southern side. In Tamil Sabha, again, it's a square structure without any pillars, but at the center, they have a pedestal for installing the idol. Here in Chitra Sabha, there are 2 rectangular halls, and in certain cases, the sculptures also represent the kind of narratives, the mythology that is associated with that particular Sabha, which is one most important example is that of Ratna Sabha, where that context of Urta Tandam is represented as an image at the entrance of the Sabha. Also, in the case of Chitra Sabha, where the entire narratives go in the form of paintings instead of sculptures, there are also very rare kind of depictions of deities are also there. And also the Sthala Puranam or the local legends associated with the temples, and how dance was an accompaniment even in the rituals that are narrated in the mythology. That's also depicted in Chitra Sabha. As a basic underlying point of all the studies that we have done, dance was a part and parcel of the temple rituals during those times, starting from the Pallava period. How this Sabha as a structure becomes an important space for dance, not only as a container, a space as a container for performing dance, but also architecture as a manifestation. How dance is manifested physically or tangibly within architecture is what that is primarily explored within the entire book.
Thank you, Ajay sir, and thank you, Abhirami. Now I would request Rima ma'am to start the final discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And may I request Dr. Alka Pandey to rejoin us on the dais. She had a good view from there, but now we want to hear from her also. So, welcome to everyone who is here this evening. Let me confess right at the beginning that what I know about Nataraja and the temple towns of Tamil Nadu, or about art, Alkaji for that matter, can be written on the back of a postage stamp. And since we no longer use postage stamps, you can understand it means zilch. But it's a pleasure to be here with someone who is 2 people who are extremely knowledgeable about their fields. And Ajay, I'm going to start by asking Alkaji some questions, because you had a couple of minutes more already on the dais, but I'm on the podium. The very, very obvious one, our title here, Temples of Cosmic Dance of Nataraja, and it's an excellent book, by the way. So Nataraja, Shiv in his form of the cosmic dance of the Lord, who is the Lord of destruction, but he's more than that. Images of Shiv. What are the earliest images of Shiv that we find in the subcontinent?
Thank you, Dronah. Can you hear me? No, you press that a little more.
Yeah. Good evening, and I want to begin by thanking my friend Shikha and Rima for inviting me on this panel. I'm really happy to be here because it got me a chance to see this absolutely fabulous book on Nataraja. Thank you so much for the book, Dr. Khare, and please do convey my heartiest congratulations to Abhirami also. It's a wonderful book, and it's so beautifully and lucidly written, both for architects, art historians, and anybody interested in the cultural interpretation of the great god, the erotic ascetic Shiva. I'm a great Shiva Bhakt myself, and I'll just go to the question what Rima asked me about Nataraj and the earliest representations of Shiva. But before I go into that, I just want to say that one of the greatest art historians, Sanskritist and Indologist of the country has written a beautiful book called Nataraj in Indian Art, Thought and Literature, which is Dr. Shivaramamurthy. And he has explained the concept philosophically, textually, figuratively, particularly through sculpture in a linear way and in a thematic way and in a deeply conscious way, because Shiva is the god who really crosses all boundaries of religiosity. He is the one god who is Nirakar, and Chidambaram, when we talk of, is actually all about cosmic consciousness. Going back to the imagery of Shiva, we have Shiva as also not as Shiva, but we have it as an epiphanic form in the Indus Valley civilization, where you see him as Rudra, where you see him not as the Puranic god Shiva, which comes into the Agam text, which comes into the mainstream of what you call Hindu thought. But Shiva goes beyond that, and the beauty of Shiva is that he also, when you look at the Panchabhuta shrines in Tamil Nadu in particular, or the Panchasthalams, he is also the god of the elements. He is fire, he is ether, he is Agni, he is part and parcel of the Panchatattva. So if you talk to when was the earliest form of Shiva, or the notion or the concept of Shiva was present, it was really present in the Vedic times, and it goes back to antiquity, where he is worshipped in a form, not where God is in the image of man. That happens really after the 4th century, and it actually begins with Buddhism. Even though Buddhism, when you see, there was no interpretation of Buddha as a form, but even the beginnings of temples, which were our devalayas, I don't like to call them temples anymore, but in the Panchasabhais or the temples of South India, they are actually all temples in India are devalayas. For me, they are our first museums. For me, they are our first cultural points of conversations to start, because you had everything in these devalayas, from philosophy, from politics, to marriage. Everything was in the temples, and all the chitrashalas, or anything which was made on the surfaces of the temples, became our wonder houses, became like the Gothic or the Art Deco churches, where you saw, even for the uninitiated, you saw religion on the walls, because our garbhagrihas are the most minimal of them all. And in the South Indian gopurams, why were they made? They were basically made for people to understand the religion of that space. The interesting thing about Shiva is that there is a huge difference in the worship of Shiva in the north and in Shiva of the south. And I'm going to go into rasa, because for me, art is all about rasa. I mean, we've had two great architects talking about space, talking about representation, talking about the way the sabhas were situated, talking about the way Abhirami talked of the karnas, the 108 karnas which are there, which are transitive forms of dance. But for me, everything emerges from emotions. It is, Bharat in his Natya Shastra gave us the greatest theory, the theory of rasa, which is so unique and is nowhere in the world. At the institute in Berlin, they are studying the history of emotions now in the 20th century, but we are soaked in rasa. And Shiva is one god, again I'll go back to that, he goes beyond rasa. Because at one point, he is the most erotic of all gods. Shiva and Parvati, one of the legends is that it was with their love making which Nandi heard and the Kama Sutra was created, one of the myths. But he's also at the other point, the Adi Yogi. And as the Adi Yogi, he becomes the greatest ascetic. So from that thing comes the dance, because dance, as we all know, is the greatest of Devakalas. Music, Indra ki sabha mein, nritya, बहुत जरूरी होता था, और नृत्यांगनाएं, whether they were Devadasis or Maharis in Orissa, all that comes from the Devakala. And the Shiva Nataraj is the lord of dance, but I would like to bring in Parvati, because the beauty of dance comes through the lasya, which actually it's also a very patriarchal world in academia to a large extent, and people don't like to also mention the fact that without the Tandav and the Lasya, because we are here to only talking about the 5 Tandavas of Shiva, but what is the Ananda Bhairavi? What is the Ananda Bhairavi? When Shiva is wearing a kundal in his ear and the Urdhastvatvam which is shown, that was a very clever thing of Shiva to do, because again it's patriarchy, where Parvati could do the Urdhva thing. She could, but she did not do it, whether it was to show her own power, like Sita did when the second time she rejected the Agni Pariksha, whether she did it out of her free will or whether she did it out of coyness. But Shiva lives right from pre-Vedic times to the present times in calendar art. So I just answer that question.
Thank you very much for bringing Shiva into the room through your very evocative imagery, verbal imagery. And I want to take the question now to Dr. Khare, because you have taken up something which was more an architecture-related project, like temple towns, conservation, rapid urbanization. You did say, people even say there are no such things as temple towns. However, see, the historian always thinks about the history of what people have done. One of your early works, and of course, I think we need to acknowledge Professor Adam Hardy's role, both for Shikhaji and for you and a lot of students, as an art historian, architect, whatever. One of your early works is actually architecture, but temples of Eastern India. So what brought you to the study of temples? What brought you to looking at this kind of space? And obviously then the imagery, you may not have paid attention to it in quite the same way as Alkaji would if she was there, but you've looked at them. So let's have a bit of that from you, your induction.
Okay. Thank you, Anil. As I mentioned, that we started this project in 2017, and first ever seminar or dissemination took place in IIT Mumbai when Dronah Foundation organized. And at that time, I with my students, started exploring these towns. And they were very different. I mean, I consider myself an architect, and as you mentioned, that I have written an earlier book, Temples of Eastern India, Temple Architecture of Eastern India. But before that, my guide is sitting here. Before that, I worked on Temple Town of Ayodhya in 1991. And just after passing out, I was working in the temple towns of various Rajasthan territory, and then worked for almost 5 years in Rajasthan. Now, when I reached, actually, we as North Indians do not go to South India to see inside of South India. How many of us have been to Tirunelveli or Tenkasi? Or how many of us we actually know what Madam has just mentioned, Panchbhutalingam? Chidambaram itself is one of the sites of Panchbhutalingam, that is Akashalingam is there. And another one, fire, which is, we all know about Annamalai University, but we don't know what is Annamalai, what is Tiruvannamalai. And when we see that fire as element, now this was a phenomena which was from 17 to 18 when we were working, and actually COVID created a different some interval in between studies, and 21 after COVID we again started from this Thanjavur and then big temple. At that time also I was thinking that as an architect we are supposed to study these World Heritage Sites, 3 which are great Chola temples, and then we'll come back. But then all these students who come from various small towns to learn about conservation architecture, and then these people actually they started taking us to smaller town centers. And actually, to answer that question, that how I went to these smaller towns. I mean, Tiruvarur, Tirunelveli, these are the towns which, oh, this girl is also here. She also went on this tour. Okay. So then we started traveling to smaller places, and that map was there. And when we started understanding the whole idea behind temple towns and how they are funded, and how they started like Brahmadaya grant, and then later on, some of the, as Ma'am was mentioning, even now, Sri Lanka is said to be the oldest Buddhist center. Now it is known today as one of the most important Vaishnavite center, and it remained अभी कैलाश जी यहाँ कैलाश राव जी हमारे मित्र वो अगर होते तो कहते सर ये वैष्णव नहीं है ये शैव the first temple was Shiv temple. Now this kind of phenomena which has created the urban environment, this actually attracted me to study more and more about temple town. And here I would like to mention that the work which we are doing after this book is continuing work, that is Cities of Faith in Peninsular India, with our another friend Dr. Gayatri Nanda, and that will be coming little later, maybe in a year or two, because there we want to cover other centers which are also on the Chera kingdom, that means in the Thrissur or Kanyakumari, but not only this. And then there's so many works to be done related with. But then our work as urbanists is not going to stop. Thank you.
We know why you need more than one lifetime to achieve things, so we have to keep coming back. We also know we have to do that until Lord Shiva does do the Tandav, the final one, rather than the last year. But you mentioned, again, because you talk of temple towns, you mentioned Annamalai and obviously Chidambaram. So Dr. Pandey, back to you this time round. The dancing form of Shiva is there. You can occasionally see one in a more recent temple in North India, perhaps. But it is very much a feature that is there at definitely the Panch Sabhai temples. Chidambaram seems to be the center. Would you like to say anything about the Nataraja imagery again, the iconography, and the connection of Chidambaram as this center, because that is where the rasa, Natya Shastra, is actually available to you. I was there the only time I've been there. I was young. But at the evening worship time, the light was fading, the temple sounds, the cymbals, the drums, one could see the images actually, like it looked like it was moving. You could understand why people could go into a trance looking at that. And that is where the eye goes, there the mind goes. Where the mind goes, the hand goes. Yeah.
So, the point is, as I was saying, I'll go back to my original thought, that there is a big difference between North India and South India, also in the worship of Shiva. And you don't see the imagery of Nataraj so much in North India. You see the Linga worship more here. You see Shiva being worshipped more in the form of Shiva Lingams. It is the concept of Shiva as Nataraj is more so in South India, and it, I think, became very, very popular in the Chola period. And you will also see Brihadeshwar. The 108 Karnas are there also in the temples of Brihadeshwar. In fact, Dr. Padma Subramaniam has done a beautiful 2-set volume on the 108, these transition. Sorry, would you just like to define the Karna? I know it's difficult to define all of this, but as you carry on. Well, Karnas, I'm really, I think, I don't feel that confident, but I'll do my best because I'm not really a dancer. The best way to define a Karna is to do the Karna, because it is the whole thing of transition. It is, jahan hasta mudra bhi hoti hai, pad mudra bhi hoti hai, and you are moving from one, you're actually moving the grammar of dance. So that is what is a karna. And
Thank you. I think that's wonderful.
and there are 108 karnas, and they are actually, I think, more in Tamil in the text. They're not even in Sanskrit. The karnas that I have read and studied. You see that Dr. Khare has done on Eastern India, then you will see Udaygiri and Khandagiri, where people have recreated Odissi dance from the temple structures. Because dance was a Devakala, the Nataraj image which emerges from the Chola period that just does not only show dance, it shows many things. It shows the whole thing of the fire, the doing away of evil. It shows the energy of Shiva through his hair. It shows the doing away of ignorance with that baby face and the demon Apasmara, where Shiva is standing on it. But the story really is more popular in North India when actually Shiva started his Tandav, which goes back to the story of Daksha Prajapati and Sati, when Sati fell there, and then Shiva took the inert body and started doing the Tandava, when the gods got very nervous, and then it was decided that Sharira has to be taken away, and that was the time when Vishnu used the Sudarshan Chakra and cut the body of Parvati or Sati into 108, and therefore there are the Shakti peaks, 108. That is a story which is of the Nataraj in North India, but you don't really see Nataraj temples in North India as you see them in South India. And also the popularity of the Chola bronzes, which you see, they popularized the theme a lot. So it is the objects which actually, they are your traveling icons. It's like the carvers, they tell stories in Gujarat and the whole storytelling happens. So with these smaller murtis of Shiva Nataraj, it becomes very, very popular. Though one of the things they say is never keep a Nataraj murti in your house because uska ugra roop hota hai. So the ugra roop you should not keep, and they also say if you keep it as an internal embellishment where the visage has to be Shanta. But Shiva can never really in his Nataraj form be Shanta, and even though it's a beautiful Nataraj that we have at the entrance. But having said that, from the Chola period it becomes very, very popular, particularly in the Tamil Nadu region. Because if you look at Kerala, it is the Bhadrakali. And you see more of Bhadrakali, you see more of Naga worship. If you go to Andhra, you see Vaishnavism coming in, and it is actually the region of Tamil country, which is Shiva country really. So you see all the sabhais, temples, Nataraj images evolving from, and a lot of stone images later start also, but they began with the more movable bronze images which started in the Chola.
I was going to move to Dr. Khare with a question.
Not as a translation of India, Bharat as our own Bharatvarsh, which does Bharan means
Nourish.
Means it is nourishing us, and it is also bearing us. Bharan. तो जो भारत हमें धारण करता है, जो हमारा भरण करता है, nourishes. So these are the issues where when we use word bha, that shows that in fact all Indian culture, our pura Bharatiya Sanskriti can be defined by some words which are starting with word bha, Bharat ka bha, like bhasha, bhojan, bhajan. And हम architects हैं तो भवन. So this way, now when we go to a place, we have to understand that what is happening in Ujjain. Why people they know that this water is probably the most dirty one. If they would like to drink, but then even then during the rituals, they will all worship that. They still will come. So now rituals becomes so important that we need to observe. Now, coming back to this book, there is one activity which happens in all these temples that's called Arudri Darshana. Madam must be knowing that. Now that is when these bronze images which became popular by Chola kings, they were all Chola bronzes actually have written our history, if we can say. But these are called Utsav Murtis. They are taken out from temples and they are taken around once in the area, that is first prakaram for so-called the many rituals. In my section we have shown temporal to most sacred. Now these are the what are they doing? These processions are showing that how this entire life of that temple town or settlement is actually working in the name of the god. Whether it is so then these Utsav Murtis are taken in a procession and then they are so these festivals like Arudri Darshanam, during Arudri Darshanam there are 16 types of Abhishek which are done for Nataraja. Now, first Abhishek, everyone knows, Gangadjal, then Dugdam, etc. So that's Sodasho Pucha. Ye jo 16 types of Abhishekams are done and then they are once again put on a vehicle and they are taken around. Now, to answer your query, that is there any indicator here? Now, this festival runs the life of that town for the entire year. And Arudri Darshanam happens from 15th December or sometime during all Nataraja temples. Now, how many temples have Nataraja consecrated? But even if in these Pansabhai temple, this Murti, Utsav Murtis are brought and they are consecrated, best festival happens in big temple of Tajau. But then all these Pansabhai temple, because there are these temples, they are consecrated gods, so they are not taken out but what they are done is, now this is one thing which the book explains, they are brought out and taken in a procession to do what, ma'am? To do graduation of dancers. Now these sabhas are actually the places where kachari ceremonies happen for the Devdasi. उनको देवदासी कहना तो before that they have to undergo a lot of hard work under gurus. So now that particular festival and these spaces which are so all these activities one need to observe very carefully. So what I would say that first thing, if we want to understand about any cultural landscape, we have to see that what are the festivals.
Okay, thank you. That's one of the pointers, but I won't make you go through more because I can see that there will be questions coming. And so let us open this out to the audience. Please, sir, would you like to also, each of you, just identify yourselves, please?
Yeah, my name is Dr. Sarvjit Dudeja. Dr. Khare, I think Ardhanarishwar image of Shiva also very important, and I don't think you have mentioned anything about it. This is not related to temples or dance or?
Ardhanarishwar.
सॉरी सर अर्धनारीश्वर भोले शंकर को डिफाइन करना तो हम जैसे मनुष्यों का काम है नहीं, थोड़ा बहुत जो पढ़ा है वो मैं इस किताब में रखा, थोड़ा सा नटराज के बारे में आप पूछें, लेकिन नटराज मतलब डांसिंग इमेज ऑफ अर्धनारीश्वर आई हैव सीन इन सम ऑफ द श्राइन्स एज मैडम हैज मेंशन, इट्स नॉट अबाउट ओनली 108 करण नहीं है, बहुत सारे और भी हैं, जिनमें से और भी
अर्धनारीश्वर 138 इमेज।
तो अर्धनारीश्वर का जो डांस फॉर्म है, देयर आर मेनी टेम्पल्स, बट आई वाज आस्किंग मी समथिंग अबाउट वितंका श्राइन।
I did ask you earlier about the 7 Vitanka shrines.
ये सप्त वितंका श्राइन जो हैं, इनमें भी डिफरेंट डांस फॉर्म्स हैं अदर देन 5 तांडव। नाउ 5 तांडव में जो हमारे जो यहाँ पे नटराज बैठे हैं या जो अभी लगे हुए थे ड्यूरिंग वृहदेश्वरा ऑन द वृहदेश्वरा टेम्पल, दैट इज आनंद तांडव। In all 5 temples of Pansabhai, there is no Urdhva Tandav. Urdhva Tandav where Lord Shiva defeated Mahakali and both of them decided to fix the match. ये जो नृत्य युद्ध था, इसको हम लोग कभी ये नहीं कह सकते कि कौन जीता कौन हारा, लेकिन उसने हमें हमारी पूरी संस्कृति दे दी। मैंने शुरू किया था सहधर्मी से। वो जो संस्कृति है अर्धनारीश्वर वाली, या ये जो चिदम्बरम में इसी स्लाइड्स में आई हैव शोन वन स्लाइड, all current 108 pushas are by Parvati ji, whereas in Vradishwara temple all 108 current postures are of Lord Nataraja. So now that is where when ma'am brought Parvati into discussion, I was so happy that okay, now this will be.
Well, as Alkaji had said right at the beginning, how do you define something that cannot be described or defined or expressed in its totality? So thank you for that wonderful question, sir. Thank you for your answer. There's a hand there. Please go right ahead. Anand, right?
Anil Prakash, yeah. Fascinating account, sir, and fascinating presentation thus far. I just wanted to understand something about Mahabalipuram. Now, if I look at the historicity of Mahabalipuram, it says it is one of the 7 pagodas, as written in the account by Marco Polo when he traveled to India in 12th century. So, my question to you is that do you think that there is an appropriation by Brahminical order or Hinduist culture of these ancient Buddhist sites, and can Mahabalipuram possibly be a pagoda or one of the pagodas, which is a Chinese version of a Buddhist stupa? So that's a question to you, sir. And to ma'am, you mentioned Rudra from Indus Valley civilization. Now, a lot of people say that the Indus Valley civilization, there were small-sized stupas which were created by a lot of craftsmen. So to consider them as Shivalingam, maybe again an example of appropriation. Yeah, because the Pashupati seal that we have found from Indus Valley civilization, it is not essentially a Shiva form. It's not. And moreover, the Indus Valley civilization script has never been deciphered. Nobody has read it. It is yet to be deciphered. So that's my question for you, ma'am.
What is the question?
The question is that do you think that there is, appropriation of, the ancient, I mean, it may be misappropriate to call them Shivalingam.
So I just like to make one thing clear. Can I?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
I talked of the concept of Rudra as a pre-Vedic god. The Pashupati seal is the god of the animals, right?
Yeah.
Pashupati, the seated terracotta seal.
Yeah.
In that, you see what was happening at that time, the Vedic period or even the Indus Valley, it was more about worshipping the elements, whether it was the gods that we worship. That's why you see so much of similarity of mythology between Varun and Poseidon, because these were all elemental gods. But having said that, I don't think any historian or any anthropologist has really, because the script has not been deciphered, we really don't know what the historical angle is. I don't think that we would like to call them Shivalings or Buddhist thought or anything, because if you look at dating and things, I don't think Buddhism can be traced to the Indus Valley in my head.
Yeah.
It evolves later, so we have to wait for the deciphering, and also this is all interpretation. And in our cultural representation, we fall back a lot on mythologies and stories because we're all about that. So I don't think I would like to say with certainty that either Buddhism, ethephalic form, whether it could be a form.
Miniature stupas.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't subscribe to that, not me.
Can I add to that also? I have actually worked on a biographical film of Professor D.B. Lal, one of the ace archaeologists of India, who's worked very extensively with Sir Mortimer Wheeler and on all these sites. He doesn't make any mention of such kind of assertions that you make.
Okay.
So he's a very secular archaeologist, and he says that there is only one way to find out things is to dig. So there is no such mention that he's made. Of course, if there are any further footnotes he's made, then
No mention made as in
he hasn't
Excavated
put Buddhism in context with the finds that have been there in the Indus Valley.
That's correct.
Has been also
That's correct. I also
just
think
adding.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for that
But
clarification.
my first question about
Your first question is what Dr. Khare is about to
Khare,
answer
sir.
now.
Yeah.
The first question about Mahabalipuram,
Mahabalipuram.
Mamallapuram, Pallava dynasty.
Because that's the most ancient structure or group of temples found
Yeah.
in Tamil Nadu.
Well,
according to Marco Polo.
it's a fascinating place, and if you go through all sculptures which are there in the various, and there is a story about Arjuna's Pines, there are Panchrathas, then why we even discuss about the chronology of the place? This has been there probably. Anything which have existed more than 1,000 years, should we ever even bother about that, whether it existed 1200 years or 1300 years before? Now, why I am saying so is that whether pagoda is a word which is being used by other people, no, sir. This was a temple, this was a copy of rock-cut temple architecture which Pallavas, actually Pallavas were not South Indian. They came from North India as subordinates of Chalukyas, and they knew all about what was happening in the Kakatiyas area, and so that they knew what is rock-cut architecture. So why those temples look more like what you see in Ajay and Ellora. It is so that I would refrain from saying, using those words, black pagoda or pagoda on the sea. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think in the excellent book by Professor Khare and Abhirami, they have also traced the history, not just of the Pallavas, but also of all the other groups that are interacting. So we have a question from
Dr. Khare, in North India, this Shivling worship, puja for a married woman is a very common thing. I don't think it's the South. The second thing is that Arya Samaj came into existence to condemning the Shiv puja or by, it's relevant in South also?
Oh, that's very interesting. Ma'am has said, when Rajendra Chola realized that he can control this business of ritual polity only by ritual polity, and his empire only by ritual polity, what did he do? He brought 3,000 Brahmins who were Dikshitas from Varanasi so that they can perform worship by Vedic traditions. Yes. So where it has come from? It has come from North, but then that North has been given back by South in equal measure, because all Sangam literature and then later on translations, etc., which have been done, then our Sanskritic traditions were maintained by South India much better than us. So it was a give and take, and that is why one of the things which I missed, madam, that is Kashi Tamil Sangamam was one of the events which have prompted me to take up this idea.
What about Swami Dayanand? He condemned this.
In the temple towns also. His question is about Swami Dayanand Saraswati and Shiva Bhakti, but it's in the south.
No, Swami Dayanand Saraswati, no, south ke nahi the, sir.
No. It was there any impact of the south, is what he's asking.
Not that I can answer that.
Right.
But yes, he did a lot of things for society. If someone else can better answer during question and answer session.
Let us stay with your topic for the moment and we can have another discussion. Would anyone like to add to it?
No, yeah, I can just add something to this. So, Maharshi Dayanand Saraswati, he wrote an interpretation of Vedas, basically. So there was a Bhashyakar of Vedas sometime around 13th or 14th century, which he challenged, and he said that because Vedas have a lot of inappropriate material in terms of their text, so he challenged that translation, and he said that this is all maybe not appropriate. So he wrote in his own version of Vedas sometime in 18th or or early 19th century. So
he
in
the 19th century.
Yeah, he condemned the Shivalingam puja because Shivalingam basically, because he thought that this is again a misappropriation of the ancient culture.
I think thank you, gentlemen, both of you, for bringing up this topic, this aspect. But let us come back to the main thing we are talking about today, because there is so much of India to explore. And the moderators are historians, so if I jump in also, we'll be having fun here forever. And an archaeologist, and an archaeologist.
I'm not an
But more questions, please. Yes. We will in a minute. Yes, you have a question.
I'm Vipul Bole. I'm not actually an archaeologist.
Yeah,
I'm not an archaeologist. I'm a filmmaker, an Indian filmmaker.
You said, yes.
Yeah, and I explore other aspects also. So I've worked with people from archaeologists to lots of other aspects. So that's how I know some bit of it. My question is very interesting one. I don't know whether I will get an answer or not. But since we are talking about the North and South connect, which is a very interesting aspect that came just as I came in, and I'm very lucky for that. The Nataraj form of Shiv, I think it's called Anil Kanda.
That's one of the Tandavas. Only one of the Tandavas, yes.
So when Shiv performs Nataraj over a pasmar that is supposed to be, delusion and doubt and all these things, there were two witnesses that are supposed to be there, which is Patanjali and Vyagrupa. Now this is where the thing becomes interesting. There is a Gotra in North India, which is Vyagrupal Gotra. Very entrenched in the north. It runs from Rajasthan to Uttar Pradesh, western parts of Uttar Pradesh and stuff like that. So how do we find the connection? Because we've got Vyagrupal temple also in the South India, specifically in Tamil Nadu.
He is consecrated also in Madurai. In Chidambaram.
Right.
And Madurai also.
So how do these people trace their, Gotra from the Maharshi? That's like
you're going to need a longer answer.
Yeah.
You're going to need some more time.
Yeah.
One more, maybe two quick questions, and then we can carry on over tea.
One lady.
Yes, of course. We have two hands. They haven't asked a question before, so certainly.
Hello, I'm Kavita Ahuja. Okay. I'm Kavita Ahuja. I'm a landscape architect. I was recently reading about an imaginary line which is longitude 79, which is known as the Shiva Shakti Aksharekha, which connects 8 temples, right from Kedarnath in the north till Rameshwaram in the south. And there are 8 Shiva temples, out of which the Panchabhuta temples also are located on this line. Is there any relevance that this line is known as the Shiva Shakti Aksharekha? Does it have any powers, or how is it related to Shiva?
Which of you?
And Kedarnath was one of the oldest temples, and the other temples came up much later. How is it that they are on this imaginary line?
Dr. Pandit. Kavita, I believe a lot that our ancestors and the ancients, they had their own intuitive way of looking at science. And if you also see much later, at the time of the Great Arc, when this Englishman was following the whole geographical concept of how things are situated geographically in India, the temples which were placed, and if you see that, it kind of goes into it in a very intuitive manner. This is an interpretation which is being done after these temples were established. So what actually does Shiva Shakti denote? It denotes a balance.
So when you talk of that Shiva Shakti Rekha, in my head what I'm interpreting it as is the balance which people have seen over a period of time, which is also associated with the concept which Dr. Tuteja was mentioning of Ardha Nari Ishvara, the Lord who is half woman, where there's complete balance between the male energy and female energy. I'm not looking at gender here, I'm only looking at energy. So where there is a balance, so therefore the temples which are on this path which have been created, the naming or the namkaran of this Shiva Shakti Rekha could have been done like that. This is my interpretation. Question over to you. You need to switch off now.
Switch off that.
Kavita, you need to switch off. Yeah, now try.
Yeah, hi, my name is Priyanka. I'm an architect and a very old student of both of instances. So, I'll make a departure from the questions that we were having. I'll come to architecture, part of it. So when the core topic of this book is defining the relationship between dance and architecture. So architecture not only relates to the building, but my question is regarding the site planning or the master planning of a temple complex, like the Gopuram perimeter and then further reaching to the core of the Garbhagriha. So do you think or have you been able to establish that even the master planning is somehow related to what was inferred by the dance forms as we are establishing here?
Thank you, ma'am. In fact, I didn't know that Priyanka is going to be here. She was my first ever student. When I entered my class, I was much more nervous than her. Going inside where Nataraja is consecrated. Now, this is where this concept is taken to towns also, to these temple layouts also, and that is where we find the finesse and fineness of those town planning issues, and that is why when we are doing this so-called smart cities project and etc. Please इनको छोड़ दो भाई, क्योंकि उनके लिए पहले यहाँ डिस्कशन करने आओ. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming to Delhi, sir.
I think we can carry on over tea afterwards. If there's somebody with a burning question,
Ma'am, आप तो कुछ कहिए.
there's a hand.
I just want to add on to what Ajay sir said and to answer to you. As you rightly said, sir, when the Utsav Vigrahas come out of the temple and the dancers accompany, it's the same thing that we see across India. And it's just not in Tamil Nadu, but even today in Odisha, you know, my research area is on Jagannath culture. So even in Odisha, even today you have the Utsav Vigrahas of Panchadhatu or Ashtadhatu. And each of the deities are carved as per the festival. Like there is a Narasimha Vigraha, there is a Krishna Vigraha, and like that. And every festival, like the Holi or Basant Panchami, and the key festivals, when the gods are coming out, the Utsav Vigrahas are coming out and going to each of the sarovars for their bath and whatever they are doing, the dancers, the Gotipur dancers, the Odissi dancers, they are also accompanying, and it also happens during the Rath Yatra. So it's a living heritage even now today.
Thank you for that. Professor Pandey, would you like to say some final words before we call the formal part to an end and go and talk over tea? Well, since you put me in a bind and I can't be ungracious and say not a word, of course I'd like to compliment again Dr. Khare and Abhirami for this really wonderful book, but also to say that how the ancient temple towns are perhaps the best way of a civil life, where there was inclusion, where there was dignity and respect given to every community. I just want to give one little incident of the importance given to the performing arts, because I'm wedded to the arts. I breathe, live, and I'm so grateful that I'm in the world of arts. When the Brihadeshwar temple was being constructed, the king actually got
dancers, he imported Devadasis to come and perform for the artisans and the craftsmen who were working on the Brihadeshwar temple, so that after a whole day's of work, they actually enjoyed the dance, and the Devadasis literally transported them into the lofty world where there is unity of Atma and Paramatma, where actually the temples are repositories of us elevating ourselves into moksha. That's what the Devalaya is. Thank you. That's the word. Thank you.
I want to let Dr. Khare say a final word, but before that, since you said aap bhi kuch boliye. No, on a sobering note, you see, when I read this book, I was very impressed by the book. If you need a book review in 3 seconds, it is something which has been very logically put together. You said what is the point of chronology, but you don't believe in it yourself. So the chronology is there also. They talk about the Nataraja form of Shiva, but they talk about the area, which you'll see in the maps. The architectural features are there, the iconography is described, the Sabha Mandaps are described, the towns are described with maps. For me, the most sobering thought, and it's there for all of us, is what is the future in the 21st century for places of heritage, of value, of meaning? Is everything going to get standardized? Because in our way of understanding and communicating, we are not able to stay in this world that we've been in for the last hour. We've really been experiencing at least the role of what a devotee would have been like 500 years ago, 300 years ago, maybe 1,000 years ago, maybe even more. Because the Lord of the cosmic dance has been dancing and will continue to dance till the world ends. But what about the future? And I know that all of you here are thinking about that. You are thinking about heritage in all its aspects. Where can we continue to make a difference? Is the future of the temple towns just going to be like what will come out of the project perhaps, but will it just be people saying, oh, this doesn't exist anymore, this doesn't fulfill the 21st century needs, let's just demolish everything and put up a high-rise because we need to house more people. So I have that. Thank you for this wonderful book. Thank you for taking us all on this wonderful journey. And I wish I could have a more, uplifting last sentence. But I think the uplifting part is that perhaps together we can. So let's leave it at that. Professor Khare, final word.
Thank you, Anil. And when we were talking that can we arrange this program, then you were gracious enough to say that, okay, ICHR, as President of ICHR India, Madam agreed to host this, and SP Bhopal is doing this project, and of course, Dronah Foundation is part of the project. I would just like to add, I have nothing related to the book. Everyone has got a brochure of the book. And I can just say from here, this book is available as part of the project to everyone free of cost, except for postage charges. And when you will write to us, please bother about writing. It has written that where you need to write. I am the Dean. The Dean RC is Dean of Research of SP Bhopal, in SP Bhopal. Then please write to us. The book will be given to every interested reader, and SP Bhopal will go forward and go on print on demand also. We have some copies left, but then it should not go to the people who are not interested in it. Those who are interested, please write to us. It will be our pleasure to stand to. Okay, ma'am? With your permission, because there is a lot of money of Dronah Foundation involved in it. Because the project was funded for the benefit, benefit of all interested readers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The thanks have been said, and it's been a very sumptuous discussion. I think let's all keep the conversation alive with the sunday snacks outside.
One request. शिखा मैम के साथ हम लोग क्या किताब लेके फोटो खिंचा सकते हैं?
Absolutely.
Yeah, please.
Thank you so much for bringing this book to us, and we are very happy at Dronah Foundation to have been contributing to the research that went into this book, and also to be hosting this book talk today. There are no final goodbyes, and we hope to see you again in many more engaging conversations.